Speakers today who are going to motivate not only you here who are here in person, but thousands of people who are going to see this later on because we're being filmed. But thank you for being here in this weather.
Thank you.
My name is Tarak Cow from the National Board of Directors of Veterans for Peace, and it's an honor to be here with all of you and all the speakers. We're standing up for something precious. We're standing up for peace in this world. I want to introduce my co-announcer, Colonel Ann Wright.
Yay!
Thank you, Tarek. My name is Ann Wright. I'm a retired U.S. Army colonel. I spent 29 years in the military. I also was a U.S. diplomat and resigned in 2003 in opposition to the war in Iraq. And since then, I've been working with great groups such as Veterans for Peace as we stand here today in front of the Lincoln Memorial, right here inside of the Washington Monument on the Memorial Day weekend, where we say the memorials should not be to war, but they should be to peace. And we'd like to open our time here with everyone who's here at the memorial. At the memorial, we're right here, Abe Lincoln, who stopped a civil war of our country that was so destructive. And so we're here, and we'd like to have Reverend Graylan Hagler open our event here today. Reverend Graylan Hagler is the senior pastor of Plymouth Congregational United Church of Christ in Washington, D.C., and the immediate past president of Pastors for Racial and Social Economic Justice. He's a longtime social justice advocate and active in the Palestine Solidarity Movement. Reverend Hagler.
Yay!
Thank you. It's good to again be here with you and to see you on this misty morning standing here in front of the Lincoln Memorial. And one of the things I just want to reiterate, because I think it needs to be lifted up over and over again, the reasons that you are here, why you stand together and why you continue to witness on this Memorial Day weekend and now into this Tuesday. You're standing for the dismantlement of the U.S. empire at home and abroad. You demand that you close U.S. bases on foreign soil and bring the troops home. You demand a ban to nuclear weapons and that we redirect the Pentagon budget, money for education, health care, infrastructure, and sustainable green energy, and not for war. Dismantle corporate greed of our government, corporate control of our government. We need to do that more now than ever before. Dismantle the school to prison military pipeline, and stop the persecution of immigrants and migrants and refugees. End sexism and gender discrimination in the military. Respect and honor First Nation sovereignty and treaties. End racism and racist violence. That is a list that we stand for because we stand for peace.
And hear me loud and clear, because we're standing in front of this memorial, and this memorial that stands for someone who lived and died in the midst of the Civil War. And we are now in the midst of another Civil War. We were in the midst of a civil war in the 1960s when the country was at war in Vietnam, and when we were struggling at home around civil rights, and when we were struggling at home around doing away with the chauvinistic sexism that existed in the culture. And we came through that civil war, and we said that there needs to be decency and respect for all human beings. And here we are again in the midst and on the throes of a new civil war, a civil war where the most reprehensive forces in the country and in the world want to do something with this country and take us back to a negative place, take us back to a racist place, take us back to a sexist place, take us back where corporations control everything about the United States of America and the world. And so we stand up for justice and peace. We will not let them have it. We will not let them take this country away from us.
Yay! Whoa, 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 whoa.
We are people of goodwill and conscience. And it was important to be here at the MLK to stand up and read the speech of April 4th, 1967.
To read that speech and to allow all of the tourists coming in there to understand that we're not here to continue to go and honor militarism and violence and imperialism, but we're here to stand up for justice because you are the ones that have served. You are the ones who have been there. You are the one that stand up and say there's a hypocrisy going on, and that hypocrisy will not be on our watch, and we're going to stand up and witness even if the country doesn't want to hear right now, because they will hear you if you continue to stand. God bless you, and continue to stand.
Greatly, he's the president of Veterans for Peace. He is doing a pretty terrific job as president. He's a Vietnam War veteran. He was the co-founder of the San Diego chapter of the Lawyers Alliance for Nuclear Arms Control. He was the president of the U. Thompson chapter 91 in San Diego from 2011 to 2012. And he's president of Veterans for Peace. And his name is Barry Ladendorf. And here he is.
All right.
And he...
Thank you all for being here to join with us, Veterans for Peace, today. Let me begin by talking about the focus of what I want to mention, and that is talking about war, the unconstitutional wars that have raged in this country for 50, 60 years and beyond. In her book, let me start with this quote. Well, I was going to start with a quote. Her magnificent book, We Were Soldiers, or They Were Soldiers, Ann Jones, author and educator, said this: most nations don't make war anymore except when coerced by the United States to join them in a spurious coalition. No other nation on the planet makes war as often, as long, as forcefully, as expensively, as destructively, as wastefully, as senselessly, or as unsuccessfully as the United States. No other nation makes war its business. And think about this, what we've done in this business since the end of World War II in 1945. We have attempted to overthrow over 50 governments, most of them democratically elected. We've bombed over 30 nations. We have attempted to assassinate over 50 leaders of countries. And in that process, since 1945, we've killed millions of people across the globe. We've made millions homeless in their own country. We've created millions of refugees in what the UN calls now the greatest refugee crisis in the history of the world. And we've done this all by violating our own Constitution, the unconstitutional wars, the violation of the UN Charter, the violation of all the conventions and common laws that we are normally expected to follow. But we have refused to do that. The most recent example, think of Syria, a nation that was not threatening the United States, in violation of our own Constitution, in violation of the UN Charter, which prohibits us from attacking a country that hasn't attacked us. We sent over 50-some cruise missiles into that country not long ago under this spurious argument that the government was behind the terrible gas attack there. And even if they were, it's not justification for the attack and the violation of our own Constitution. So if the business of the United States is war, how is it that, as Jones suggests that our business of war, how is it that this continues? How do we continue to allow it to happen? Well, William Blum, in his book, the America's Most Dangerous Export Democracy, says this. He's a former State Department official and author. The fact that American leaders, with the help of a compliant and dutiful press, have been able to convince a majority of the American people of our benevolent and well-intentioned foreign policy in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary must rank as one of the most outstanding feats of propaganda and indoctrination in all of history. So, I would add to that the continued misinformation delivered by the government in support of these wars, and the ratcheting up constantly of fear to keep the American people fearful about what's to happen to them unless the military is given free rein. So what can we do then as veterans standing here who have experienced war, who have fought these battles across the globe? Veterans have one common thing in mind, among many others, but we share this. We all took an oath to preserve and protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It was not an oath, remember this, it was not an oath of loyalty to the president. It was not an oath for creating an empire across the globe. It was not an oath to a political agenda. It was not an oath to a political party. That was not what we did. We took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. And it was... What we did take an oath to was the ideals embedded in the preamble of the Constitution, which allowed and permitted us to create a Constitution that would provide for a more perfect union, to allow us to establish justice, to ensure domestic tranquility, to provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare. That's what most of us believed we were doing when we took an oath. But we all learned too soon, unfortunately, that we were deceived and misled, and that in spite of our invasions of countries across the globe, in spite of dropping more bombs, killing innocent civilians in countries around the world, that it was not the North Vietnamese, it was not the communists, it was not Russia, it was not China, it's not ISIS, it's not the Taliban, and it's not Muslims who put the Constitution of this country in danger and the values that we stand for. Take a look behind you. The capital of the United States, the enemy is in this city, in this time, in this place. The Capitol, the White House, the Pentagon, the people, the lobbyists, the money lenders, the war profiteers on K Street, they're the ones who are the danger of the Constitution. And we're here today because we stand by with you. We need your help to confront that deep state that has been created. And unless we start to do that, it's going to be too late. But let's start now. Join us. Thank you for being here today. And will you join us, please, when we march to the White House, but not just today. Make it a commitment to stand with us, to stand with your neighbors and friends. Let's end this conflict. Let's end this attack on our Constitution. Let's end this attack on our ideals. Let's not be afraid. Let's be bold, and let's march to end this war, these unconstitutional wars, and preserve the union that we all deserve. Thank you very much. Again, thank you for being here.
Ladendorf, National President of Veterans for Peace. Yay. Well, we have a lot of great speakers today, and the next one you'll know from a lot of different ways. From seeing her on TV as she challenged the president as he's giving press conferences, as she stands up in the halls of Congress to let the members of Congress know what people around the world are thinking about many of their decisions. The co-founder of Code Pink Women for Peace and author of Drones and Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of the Unjust. Please welcome Medea Benjamin.
Thank you, and it's so wonderful to spend the day after Memorial Day with the Veterans for Peace, who understand that one of the worst things about this country is the glorification of the military, the glorification of war. And what we need to do, and what you all do as Veterans for Peace, is glorify peace, glorify the peacemakers. And when we got this crazy guy in the White House, raise your hand if you're so embarrassed by having this guy represent us and how it makes us feel the world is looking at us like, what did you, the American people, do? We have this crazy guy in the White House who's got his hand on the nuclear button. We've got a guy in the White House who, when we talk about the business of this country being the business of war, just comes back from Saudi Arabia, where he is so happy that he made a great deal selling $110 billion to the most repressive, misogynist, intolerant, extremist country in the world, the country responsible for spreading the Wahhabist ideology that is the basis of Al-Qaeda, that is the basis of ISIS. And he comes home and says, great job I did. Just sold him $110 billion that is supposed to mushroom to over $300 billion worth of weapons in the next 10 years. And what are those weapons used for? Crushing internal dissent like the Shea minority, crushing democratic uprisings in neighboring countries like Bahrain, and worst of all right now, for the last 2.5 years, daily bombing of neighboring Yemen that have turned this very poor country into an absolute catastrophe where every 10 minutes there is a child dying from the effects of war. This is our weapons.
Yes,
Obama sold weapons too. Thank you for bringing that up. Obama sold a lot of those weapons. We opposed him and his sale of weapons. But at least at the end of his administration, he started to see what those weapons were doing. And he put a halt on some of them, and he pulled back some of the support for the Saudis. Then comes in Trump, and he just turns it all on. He increases the weapons sales, he increases the support for the bombings, and he's about to give a green light to the invasion of the only port where the majority of the humanitarian aid comes in, and that's Hudaida, which will lead to a full-blown famine in Yemen. What can we do now? We can contact our Congress people. They were silent for the 42 weapons deals that Obama did, but we have now a chance to ramp up the opposition, and we've got to do that. So please join with us, Veterans for Peace, Code Pink, World Beyond War, Just Foreign Policy, and all these groups that are coming together to say no to the weapons sales to Saudi Arabia, just as we want to say no to weapons sales to all repressive regimes that the U.S. is supplying with weapons. So thank you for the chance to be here today. Thank you for your unending work to bring peace to this United States and peace to the planet. Thank you.